Imagine standing in the bitter cold. Snow's deep on the ground, the air is just sharp with hunger and disease.
That's Valley Forge.
That's Valley Forge, winter of 77, 78. The Continental Army is, it's starved, ragged, and barely even functioning.
And yet,
Under this relentless Prussian officer, Baron von Steuben, these weary, starving farmers are learning how to fight, how to march, how to be a real army. And that transformation, that's the desperate, ragged heart of the American Revolution.
okay, let's unpack this. We've pulled together a comprehensive stack of material detailing, the causes, the key battles, the powerful philosophies, and crucially, the people who made it all happen.
Right.
Our mission here is to give you the shortcut to really understanding the American foundation.
We're here to get you the most critical insights. So we're not just focusing on what happened, but trying to understand that tension between economic pressure on one side and Enlightenment philosophy on the other.
Right.
It's all about how the ideas about government and the people it governs just permanently changed. To understand the war, you really have to follow the money. So let's start there, at the beginning. The causes. Our sources connect the dots straight from British mercantilist policies to colonial resentment.
Right. And mercantilism, just to be clear, is this economic belief that colonies exist for one reason.
To make the mother country rich.
Exactly, to serve the financial interests of Great Britain. They supply raw materials, they buy the finished goods, end of story. And after the French and Indian War, Britain had this massive debt, and they looked at the colonies and saw a resource to be squeezed.
And that squeeze began, immediately. You look at the proclamation of 1763. On the surface, it's just, border control, restricting westward expansion. But the deep insight here is that colonists saw it as proof. Britain viewed them as tools, not equals. Keep them on the coast, they're easier to control, easier to tax.
And that insult was just compounded by a whole series of taxes designed to raise money. You get the Sugar Act, then the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and then, of course, the big one.
The Tea Act.
The Tea Act. And the cumulative effect of all this, it just felt like a coordinated pattern of oppression. And that's where the rallying cry was born.
Taxation without representation.
That's it.
And that Tea Act, of course, leads straight to the Boston Tea Party. And the British response, the intolerable acts, that was the absolute breaking point.
It was. They were intended to isolate Massachusetts, to make an example of them, but they did the exact opposite.
So how did the colonists respond?
Well, what's fascinating is that their first weapon wasn't a musket. It was economics, organization. They started these massive boycotts, hitting the British economy right where it hurt, in the wallet.
And politically?
Politically, they got organized and fast. You see this move from, informal committees of correspondence to the First and then the Second Continental Congress. They were effectively starting to govern themselves.
And you can't talk about that kind of grassroots organization without mentioning Samuel Adams.
Oh, absolutely. He was the master organizer, a key leader in the Sons of Liberty, and really the person who channeled all that colonial outrage into actual political action, like the Boston Tea Party.
But the real fuel for this fire wasn't just about money, was it?
No, not at all.
Our sources point to these really old philosophical ideas that just fundamentally changed how colonists saw their place in the world.
Absolutely. The roots run so deep, you have to look back at things like the Magna Carta, which first established the idea of a limited government.
Meaning even the king has to follow the rules.
Right. Then you have the English Bill of Rights, which set out specific rights for citizens.
And even here, in the colonies, you had the Mayflower Compact. The Pilgrims were already practicing self-government, this idea of consent of the governed, way before 1776.
And all these historical precedents, they just converge so powerfully with the Enlightenment. We're talking about thinkers like John Locke and his ideas about natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and the social contract.
So what's the big shift here?
The shift is huge. The Magna Carta established rights granted by a king. The Enlightenment established rights that are inherent to every person. They're yours because you're human. That completely overhauls where power comes from.
But that's a very high-level theory. It needed to be packaged for the common person.
And that's where Thomas Paine comes in.
Common sense.
Yes. Our sources show this pamphlet was just everywhere. It was written in plain, emotional language, and it persuasively shifted the argument from fighting for rights as Englishmen to demanding complete separation. It made the revolution make sense to everyone.
And that emotion was captured perfectly by people like Patrick Henry.
Give me liberty or give me death.
It really perfectly summarizes the choice they faced, doesn't it? Stay a subject or become a revolutionary. And this all culminates in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, written mostly by Thomas Jefferson.
Right, and it's the ultimate statement of those ideals: unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that core idea that government gets its power only from the people.
But the Declaration is a complex document, isn't it? I mean, it has these soaring, universal claims.
But it was also a political weapon, a piece of propaganda almost. The bulk of the text is just a list, specific actionable grievances against King George III to justify the break.
So what were the big ones? What did the sources identify as the acts that really proved the king had broken that social contract?
Well, the list is long, but taxation without representation is top of the list, of course. Also, the forced quartering of soldiers in private homes.
Having soldiers live in your house?
Yes, and cutting off their trade. Refusing to let their own legislatures meet. These were all seen as direct attacks on their ability to govern themselves.
Okay, this is where the analysis gets truly illuminating. These grievances, they didn't just fade away after the war.
No, they became the blueprint.
The blueprint for the Constitution, for the remedies designed to stop these exact abuses from ever happening again.
That's exactly right, the complaint about taxation. That directly led to the rule that all tax laws have to come from our elected representatives in Congress. It's right there in Article 1.
And the quartering of soldiers.
Banned, explicitly banned forever in peacetime by the Third Amendment.
Were they sure that just banning things was enough to stop a powerful executive? What else did they need?
They knew they needed procedures, barriers. So for all of those other abuses of power, unfair trials, the king acting like a dictator, they built in due process and a system of checks and balances.
The Fifth Amendment.
The Fifth Amendment is a great example. It mandates due process. It limits the government's power to take away life, liberty, or property. It creates hurdles to block the kind of unilateral power King George had.
Okay, so the conflict itself, it starts with those dramatic shots at Lexington and Concord.
The shot heard round the world.
But we have to remember, the bloodshed had actually started earlier. Our sources remind us that Crispus Attucks, an African-American man, was the first casualty of the Revolution years before at the Boston Massacre.
A crucial point. And leading this whole incredibly difficult war effort was George Washington,
the commander of the Continental Army,
whose leadership was really defined less by battlefield genius and more by just sheer endurance, keeping that army together through years of hardship.
But the real strategic turning point of the war, that came at the Battle of Saratoga. Why was this one victory in upstate New York so critical?
Because Saratoga proved to the world, and specifically to France, that the Americans could actually win, that they could win a major conventional battle.
It showed they were a legitimate force.
Exactly. Before that, it was seen as just a colonial rebellion. After that, thanks to the tireless diplomacy of Benjamin Franklin in Paris, France officially joined the war. And that changed everything. They provided the money, the navy, the troops that the colonists desperately needed.
And that French support was immediate and tangible. We have to mention the Marquis de Lafayette.
A young French officer who became like a son to Washington. He fought alongside him, a trusted general, and he really symbolized that vital French-American partnership.
But it's also so important to acknowledge the contributions from diverse groups. Their participation made victory possible.
This isn't just moral support we're talking about. This is direct tactical and strategic contribution.
Give us an example.
Okay, look at African-American patriots like Wentworth Cheswell. A free landowner, he made an all-night ride, just like Paul Revere, to warn of a British invasion, and he fought bravely at Saratoga.
Or of the incredible intelligence work done by James Armistead.
An amazing story. Armistead was an enslaved African-American who served as a double agent. He got the trust of the British General Cornwallis, fed him disinformation, all while funneling critical intelligence back to Lafayette and Washington.
And that intelligence was key to the final victory at Yorktown.
Vital to cornering Cornwallis at Yorktown, absolutely.
And the women of the Revolution were integral too. Someone like Mercy Otis Warren, she didn't carry a musket.
No. But she used her powerful writing, her plays, to argue for independence. She was like a revolutionary publicist.
Then you have the more personal support from figures like Martha Washington.
Yes. Spending those brutal winters at the camps, sewing, nursing, providing supplies and morale that literally kept the army from falling apart at places like Valley Forge.
So all these threads, the French alliance, the intelligence, Washington's endurance, the contributions of every patriot, they all converge at Yorktown.
Where the British, led by Cornwallis, are trapped by land and by sea. They have no choice but to surrender.
And that brings the political conclusion. The Treaty of Paris in 1783.
where the British finally formally recognized American independence. The war was over.
So what does this all mean? It means a new nation was founded, not just on a military victory, but on this revolutionary idea that political power flows up from the people.
Right, not down from a king. The people grant consent to be governed. That is a fundamental break from the old world.
So to summarize it, the revolution was really this collision of crushing economic pressure, philosophical ideals, centuries in the making, and just immense wartime hardship.
Endured by a unified but profoundly diverse group of people.
The colonists fought for unalienable rights, but that fight required incredible sacrifice from so many people, like the African Americans and women we mentioned, whose own rights were not fully acknowledged in the new nation.
Not even close. Even after they were essential to achieving that victory.
Which raises an important question for you to think about.
Given all the eloquent promises of equality in the Declaration, what inherent tension did the new United States immediately face? It had to realize those promises had not been extended to all the crucial patriots who made independence possible. How much of the revolution, for people like James Armistead or Abigail Adams, was actually still yet to come?